Conditions on the battlefield in Ukraine continue to inch in the direction, in the wrong direction, back toward the west, as Russian forces continue to make methodical pressure really all along the line of contact, most acutely in an area called Avdiivka, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But there's also lots of issues going on in and around Ukraine, both in the capital with some political divisions, some confusions between who's in charge militarily and where the troops' loyalties lie. And then even outside of Ukraine, in Western capitals, like in the United States and in Europe, where the funding that has been so instrumental in keeping Ukraine afloat is now, it's slowed down to a trickle, and it's not completely sure if it's going to kick back in. To help us understand what the implications and the ramifications are for the Ukraine military, we have Matthew Van Dyke, who is the founder of Sons of Liberty International, here to talk with us today. He's coming to us live from Kiev in Ukraine itself. So we're very grateful to have you today, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, we've had you on before. You've not just been in Ukraine for a long time. You don't just have a lot of I guess time-wise understanding how things have developed over time, both the highs and the lows. But you've actually fought on the side of Ukraine in the past on the very front lines. So you have a real firsthand view that just few in the United States have or even get from some of the mainstream media. So we're very grateful to have you on today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So let's just dive right into it. And for those of our viewers who may not be aware of what's going on in Avdiivka, we had the spokesman Kirby from the White House yesterday actually come clean a little bit about the challenges in that city.
Fighting is incredibly intense in the east, particularly in a city called Avdiivka. It's a city that we've talked about several times before. Unfortunately, we're getting reports from the Ukrainians that the situation is critical, with the Russians continuing to press Ukrainian positions every single day. Avdiivka is at risk of falling into Russian control. In very large part, this is happening because the Ukrainian forces on the ground are running out of artillery ammunition. Russia is sending wave after wave of conscript forces to attack Ukrainian positions, and because Congress has yet to pass the supplemental bill, we've not been able to provide Ukraine with the artillery shells that they desperately need to disrupt these Russian assaults.
Now, Avdiivka, if that sounds familiar to some people, there was a photo that was released of Zelensky not long ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, when he went to Avdiivka and took a picture in front of the signpost right there. Yeah, that's the one there where he took a selfie in front of the post to show that, hey, he was visiting the front. And certainly that always bolsters support among the troops there. But now then, in this picture you see here now, at least what's being reported on some Russian Telegram channels is that very pole that was behind Zelensky has now had a Russian military flag put up on it. That's what's being claimed anyway. We don't have any way of independently verifying that. But obviously, warfare is as much on the front lines as it is in the minds of people. So it's an intelligence-driven war as well, and that's psyops, as some call it, where they want to specifically put up something to say, hey, Zelensky was here, but now we're here, etc. So let me just first of all ask you, Matt, if you have much knowledge about Avdiivka specifically, or if you've talked to any of your fellows that you've worked with who may have, how do you view the situation in Avdiivka?
I mean, everybody's clearly very concerned about it. There's some anger because there is a shortage of artillery rounds, which is contributing to the loss of the city. Would the city have fallen without the delays in American aid? Quite honestly, it's very possible, but probably not this rapidly. It's also a vicious cycle because really the greatest threat to infantry in some ways now, in addition to the artillery, is drone-dropped munitions and FPV drones, which are essentially controlled mini cruise missiles, targeted soldiers. Missions I was on, we were targeted by grenades dropped from drones that hunted us, and it really means you can't even step outside of your dugout. So the problem is that with a lack of artillery shells, Ukrainians have had to rely on these drones to make up for lack of artillery, which means that they don't jam the signals as much. And Russia by now has outnumbered Ukraine in drones. So really it's forced Ukrainians to allow drones flying in the sky so that they can hit back against Russia without artillery. So the consequences there's a long line of consequences from this delay and support from the United States.
Yeah, we actually had a clip the other day, Gary. If I didn't prep you on this, but if you can pull that up, we had one from Alex of History Lessons a few days back talking about that very issue and had some video on that. If you can bring that up in a few minutes, that would be great. But in the meantime, the one of the problems that's exacerbating the tactical situation is the fact that you have Ukraine after many months of backdoor and behind the scenes arguments between Zelensky and the commander Zelensky. Zelensky finally pulled the trigger and put Syrskyi in there, General Syrskyi. And I'm just wondering, how do you view that change, and more particularly, how are the troops in Ukraine viewing that? Because I just know from a personal experience, when in my combat experience, having the commander in chief come down to the front lines like Zelensky did there is a huge thing, because that shows that you're sharing some of the risk with us. But then when you see the military commander switched out in the middle of the war, it just raises a lot of questions about what's really going on at the top. How have your observations been that is impacting anyone there?
Well, the feedback that I got from Ukrainian soldiers, they were actually, in addition to being a bit angry because Zelensky is very popular, they were also panicked in some ways because they didn't know what was going to come next. At least with Zelensky, they knew what they were getting. They have concerns about Syrskyi's tactics, and even about his background, having been born in Russian territory in the Soviet Union. All those issues, I think, are just chatter among the rank and file. They really don't know what to expect. But I think in recent days, it's kind of calmed down a bit, where people are accepting that, look, Zelensky would have fired Syrskyi if he didn't have confidence in him, and he had kept him. So any failure they see in Syrskyi is a failure of Zelensky in a way as well.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Syrskyi can do. I think the Ukrainian soldiers will fall in behind him and support him. Something obviously has to change. We're not currently winning this war. A lot of mistakes have been made over the past year. The counteroffensive largely failed in 2023. Another attempt needs to be made, and some fresh blood in there might be a good thing.
And so in terms of the fresh blood, so there's obviously a move to try to mobilize large numbers of people. That Zelensky himself said that he needed 500,000 troops by sometime this late spring or summer. Now then, that appears to be running into a couple of problems. Number one is that the parliament has still not completely passed the law, so I guess it's as fast as it could. But then there seems to be a second issue with whether they can physically afford those troops because of the physical money to pay salaries and uniforms and boots and just the basics for that. So I read one report that suggested maybe 200,000 is probably the most they could get. So the question is, if that indeed is right or anything close to it, is that going to be enough to even mount a potential offensive later this year?
It's really not clear. It depends on what difference F-16s make on the battlefield. It doesn't look like they will make as big a difference as some had hoped, perhaps. The manpower shortage is a very serious issue. Some of the larger units here are running billboards all over the city, some of them quite creative, trying to recruit people to join them. The more elite units that are a little bit separate from the military, but it's a relationship. It's a complicated structure here, but there's that attempt. There's forced conscription that really now are the nightmare scenarios that people used to talk about before they actually happened here, where people are out past curfew by police, and there is a recruiter there who forcefully conscripts them in the military, and within days they could be getting some quick training and on the front. So a lot of this is going to be conscription, recruitment, and volunteerism has fallen dramatically. And the manpower is probably the biggest challenge facing Ukraine.
Yeah, I remember on your last visit to our show here, you talked about how when you had been on the front lines that I think the average age was like 43, and you said a lot of them were not in the best shape physically. So I just obviously as a soldier, I also have concerns about it, with these forced conscriptions and mobilizations. If they're grabbing people under those conditions, they're not going to be the most motivated, I guess, when they get to the front line. And do you have any sense for how how challenging it might be within a unit, that especially one that has a long period of combat unity, and they have experience, and then they get some of these guys in who might not be as motivated? How hard is it to incorporate them into a unit?
I mean, it's obviously very difficult, but these units are regularly depleted. The casualty rate is quite high. Uh, they're happy to have anybody to fill those positions, I suppose. The units that are recruiting using their own private funding on billboards and so on, those are all volunteer units. So, and they're like the Third Assault Brigade that's just gone into Avdiivka to assist there. The 47th, which is a unit that my organization trained in the past. They're remaining volunteer units. Units that are getting conscripts, they know what it's about. They're happy to have another gun on the front line. But again, the motivation factor, if somebody doesn't want to be there, it's going to be difficult to get them to get out of that dugout, especially when there's grenades being dropped on them if they do. It's a very serious problem and no real easy solution to this one.
Yeah. Gary, by any chance, were you able to find that one from Alex? That video? Nope, couldn't find. Okay, no problem. The one thing I do want to talk about here is, in fact, since you mentioned that Third Assault Brigade that was coming down, one of the reasons they've been hampered in their ability to even get down to help the Avdiivka garrison is because of some horrible mud conditions. Gary, if you can roll that tape there, this is just from a couple of days ago. What we're about to show here. I've actually done some mechanized operations in mud similar to this, and it is incredibly difficult to get troops and equipment to be able to move in. Yeah, that's the one there. This is from just a couple of days ago, and you're going to see here in a second there's some a truck that's just buried up to the axle in mud, and it's so hard to move. And you're talking about over open ground. It's hard enough when you can drive fast over a road. And Matt, if you have any experience with this, let me know. You're always going to be worried about either drones or artillery firing at you when you're moving across open spaces. But when you get a truck like that, I mean, it becomes, a target-rich environment pretty quick. And it's so hard to get troops up there, especially when it's in an open field with no cover.
Right. I've been on missions in Ukraine and both, they always involve a lot of mud. It's not this time of the year, especially. The ground freezes, it thaws. The same soil that makes it such a great agricultural base in Europe also makes it extraordinarily muddy. I mean, you get this on your boots. It feels like you have two cinder blocks on your feet. Vehicles get stuck. If you have a pickup truck and you are not very good at driving off road, you're going to get it stuck, and vehicles are going to be starting to stack up behind you. So, it is one of the biggest challenges. It's why counteroffensives and offensives can only really occur at certain times of the year and under certain conditions. And yeah, it adds to the stress, because if you go off the muddy path, then you're in danger of stepping on landmines. So the same areas get tracked over and over again. And then if they do freeze back over, then you have ruts that some vehicles can't even get over through.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of that part. Yeah, the rut sometimes is almost as impassable as the mud is there as well. One other question I wanted to ask you, both from your own perspective as well as from some of your comrades you may have been talking to, is the fact that the U.S. Is squabbling so much over among itself in Congress, both among the Senate and the House, as well as within the Republican Party itself. They're trying to tie any kind of aid to Ukraine with border security, and really it's probably more an issue of political wranglings between the Republicans and the Democrats, much more than it is about any actual situations. But the bottom line is that the money hasn't been able to come loose, and so there hasn't been any more money. And I'm wondering, what is the impact on the fact that when, as you say, your comrades there are already saying that they don't have enough ammunition to go toe to toe with Russia, and right now the spigot is off, and there's no idea when it may come on, how big it may come, what rounds may come later. What does that impact have on the people on the front line on the Ukraine side?
I mean, I don't know how people in Congress live with their conscience about what they've done. It absolutely has caused the loss of life on the Ukrainian side. The reduction in ammo, even just the morale issue, where it's already quite low morale here because the counteroffensive didn't go as well, and because of the casualty rate, and Russia catching up in drone technology, and then to have your biggest supporter that you were counting on, who was with you, delaying aid coming to you, it's devastating on the morale point, and then that affects recruitment. There's a million ways that this just, like, certain decisions made in Congress to play games with something this vital, just cascades into a lot of different areas that end up costing lives, and it's truly tragic. And hopefully they'll be held accountable at the ballot box, but who knows?
The next thing I want to talk about is this famous speech that happened, or interview rather, that happened between Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin. And in that, one of the things that Putin talked about in there was that he seemed to be at least publicly willing to have a negotiated settlement of some sort. Does anybody on the Ukraine side that you talk to anyway believe that there actually is any grounds to have a negotiated settlement, or do they just say it's all nonsense, don't even want to listen, we want to keep fighting until we win? What's the view right now?
Some do, some don't, but there really can't be much of a negotiated settlement with Russia because Russia will always come back. I mean, throughout Russian history, if you go back to the very founding of Russia, there's only been a few decades. That's the longest stretch that they've ever been fully at peace. So you do any peace deal with Russia, they won't respect it. They'll just rebuild, rearm, and they'll come right back. It makes it very hard to find any solution other than pushing Russia fully out of the territory, digging trenches, and putting up enough landmines that they can't possibly get through again.
And so I understand that that's going on right now, is that while they're trying to hold off on Avdiivka, that there's, I think, 15, 16 kilometers behind the line, there's a new line of defense that they're trying to build up rapidly. Is that the thought right now, is let's try to hold the line as best we can for the time being?
Right. They're trying an active defense, trying to reconstitute the military, do the recruitment drive, do the training. It's not really clear how much of a counteroffensive, if the big will be this year or 2025. I believe they have to do something this year. But yeah, I mean, they're in a rebuilding phase. What they were counting on working in 2023 didn't work. I think it could have worked if it had perhaps been done last winter, instead of delaying into spring and summer, giving Russia time to build its fortifications and lay more mines. The minefields and the Russian artillery is what really messed up the counteroffensive attempt. But lessons learned. It's time to move forward. But there's definitely the change in leadership at the top, recruitment drives. They recognize the need for training. I think they're a little bit too reliant on technology still, and thinking that electronic warfare and drones are the answer when it's very hard to even compete with Russia, at least on the drones. Even now, Russia is outnumbering Ukraine in drone technology. So
yeah, and I've seen a lot of reports earlier, even today, that the West, Latvia, I want to say, is one of them at least. It's trying to ramp up production outside of Ukraine that's not subject to a lot of these theater missiles that Russia is firing to try to destroy all the factories that are out there. So that's hampering that on its own. But the problem is that on the other side of that line in Russia, which is not subject to long-range strikes from the Ukraine side, at least not consistently, that their production is going up in both the drones, the artillery shells, which is continuing to ramp up, and that disparity seems to be growing. Given those trends moving in opposite direction, do you think, and then actually this will be the last question I'll ask you here, do you think that there's a point at which the Ukraine side could say the trends are just moving too far to where it's not even possible to hope for a military victory anymore, and the choice between either making a bad negotiated settlement or a military defeat could have to be decided between? Is anyone even thinking in those terms yet?
No, I don't think we're anywhere near thinking that way. I think the lessons learned from the first attempt at a counteroffensive that failed here this past year, those have been learned. Another attempt will be made. I don't see Ukraine giving up because they know they can't. They know the history of Russia. They know that no deal can be honored with Russia. They're fighting for their very survival. It's really, and Putin's not going to negotiate anyway when he thinks he's winning, right? So he can say that he's willing to negotiate or negotiate settlement, but what is that? Part of the reason he's in this war is because he doesn't want Ukraine part of NATO. So a NATO security guarantee to Ukraine is not really a negotiating point. Returning territory, Putin won't do. He believes he can win, and if the West doesn't get it together with getting aid to Ukraine more quickly and taking down some of these barriers that they're having, that authoritarian regimes like Russia don't have, then Putin's vision of how this turns out could be more accurate than what we all hope it will be. It will be tragic because we're really fighting for the future of the Western world here, and people are playing politics in Europe and America with something this vital.
Yeah, and no matter what anybody thinks on any side, which is just always the most anguishing to me, is the bill payers are the Ukrainian soldiers, the Ukrainian countryside, and the civilians that get caught in between there. And man, we just want this killing and destruction to end, and some chance for a sustainable peace to be able to come out for the Ukrainian people. So we respect what you're doing. You can keep trying to help the Ukrainian people there, and we wish you the best of luck. And we pray for your safety while you're there. So thank you for all that, and thank you for coming on our show today, Matt.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always nice speaking with you.
All right, thanks a lot, and we thank you for that too. For you guys for watching us. Don't forget, we're going to come back later today. I believe it's at 2:00. I don't have my schedule in front of me. We're going to be talking kind of the larger, the strategic view of what's going on in the Ukraine war, and then also you may have heard that Navalny, the Russian dissident, was killed today in a Russian prison. And we have some interesting things to point out, some things you might not know on that, and I believe that's also at 3:00 this afternoon. So watch your feed for those kind of things, because those are coming out and you're not going to want to miss them. Thanks. We ask you to like and subscribe. And remember, we are unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you all the information that it's out there, things you're not going to get other places. And we will see you later this afternoon on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.